what I thought would be a really good exercise if I tell you a story. Okay, I've had my own, I wouldn't say issues with alcohol, my own story, if that makes sense. I thought if I tell you the story, Phil, you could tell me the sort of advice that you'd give to someone like me, because I imagine lots of people would resonate with the sort of story that I've got. And Dan, you could maybe think about how to market that. How would you pinpoint people like me? What sort of storytelling aspect would there be behind it? Social media channels would you use? You know, what hooks, right? So, Phil, I was sober for 176 days. In short, me and Dan did a podcast with someone, Mike. Mike Mayer, an amazing sobriety coach, and he said about doing the dry January, which I imagine lots of people do. I wouldn't say I had a problem with alcohol. And looking back now, was it a problem? By UK standards, it wasn't. By world standards, it was. And that's something that we can talk about, okay? So I'll drink every day, but I'd just have a beer, glass of wine, maybe a few more on the weekend, okay? I did the dry January and I felt great. I had clarity. I was working better. I was losing weight. I was a better husband. I was really creative as well. I noticed I was a lot more creative than I was, all right? That motivated me to go 60 days, 90 days. Then easily I got into a cycle of actually even saying to everyone that I know and all my friends and family that, look, maybe I'm not going to drink again. I noticed a few things. One, on the flip side, I'm a football fanatic. I lost a little bit of interest in football. So I noticed that I'd associate having a beer, no, going to the football and having a beer. So when there was no going to the football and no watching it in pubs because I wasn't drinking, interest in football went. And that also had a negative aspect of my relationship with some of my friends as well, if that makes sense, right? But the real killer was this. Wedding anniversary, I told my wife, you can go wherever you want. She goes, right. She booked Ibiza, San Antonio, no, Playa d'Embossa, sorry, to see Calvin Harris at Ushwa on the 200th day I was sober. And I didn't know what to do, okay? And I imagine that's a position that lots of guys find themselves in. Wedding, stag do, works do, Christmas do, all those sort of events, if that makes sense, yeah? So let's look at this from like different lenses. I would say, Dan, that's a normal person's problem when it comes to drinking, yeah? Right?
Yeah.
Not fitting in with friends, worried about coming to an event, like Phil said about not fitting in, right? Because I think that was a big thing for me, was social conforming with drinking. Tell me a little bit more. What would you tell someone who had a problem like that?
It's a great question, actually. So your anxiety then for going to Ibiza then. So how would you have scaled that then? What was your anxiety on
Oh,
0 to
wow.
10?
A good one. Okay. So I would say this. So I love Ibiza. It's my favorite place on the planet. In the past, I've been going for 15, 16 years, even more. When I would go in my teens, it would be that cliche, getting flat out drunk, staying up all night or whatever. And you associate having great times with being drunk. As a guy from Britain, I think you have this feeling that you have to do it. You'll only enjoy yourself more if you get drunk. And I feel sometimes you're conditioned to feel that way. As you get older, obviously the hangovers are worse, and you're a little bit more cautious and wary of your behavior. So I'd say, yeah, a 9. I was really worried about going almost to the point where I was going to say to my wife, I don't want to go, if that makes sense. So yeah, I was really, really worried. And I imagine that's a similar feeling that lots of people go is you don't want to let down your wife. You don't want to have that FOMO feeling of like fear of missing out. You want to conform. You're slightly conditioned to act like that. There's lots of different ways to look at that.
Yeah, because lots of people along the alcohol-free route, they'll have setbacks. There's times when that they have a good run and then they lose it. What was interesting, what you've just said is, and quite often when I am coaching people, we're talking about alcohol, it's trying to make sure you're not exposing yourself to those situations where there is a trigger. And generally you encourage clients to make sure you have an exit route. Quite difficult when your wife has booked a holiday and it's almost like you probably feel duty bound to do as you're told. And was she aware of your position when it came to alcohol?
Yeah, she obviously knew I wasn't drinking. She was really supportive throughout the whole thing. I think she just thought I was going to go and be normal. I think she thought I was just going to go and be like the Greg she's known for 6 years. And I had to remind her that, look, something's changed here. I'm a little different now. And she was actually, I was worried about her not being so understanding, and she was. So that's cognitive dissonance, isn't it? The idea of like the angel on one shoulder and the devil on the other. That was just worry. And actually that worry wasn't quite there. And that's where
Yeah.
coaching would be great, wasn't it? Because they would actually say, look, she'll be understanding. She'll know. I think there's something you said about socially, conforming,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. It's a tough one. And I found that really hard with the football.
I was going to
Massively.
say though, so for the trip to Ibiza, so what was your biggest fear?